And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has administered the oath of office to the newly appointed members of his cabinet. The ceremony took place inside the conference room of the presidential villa earlier today in Abuja. The ministers at that time designates took their oath of office alphabetically according to their states of origin and in the batches of 5 each. Among the ministers is the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, that's Mr. Abubakar Kyari. A lot, I tell you, is lined up for all of this ministers that took the oath of office today. And joining me on the show to start the week this Monday to set an agenda and look at the task ahead of the new minister, I'm being joined by the President, National Quoting Association of Nigeria, Mr. Anibe Achimugo. Thank you so much. It's good to have you on the program. Happy New Week to you, Mr. Achimugo.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like us to start with the present state of Nigeria's agricultural sector. And of course, look at development so far. I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. Well, I don't think we are where we should also be.
Yes, you're right. I think that agriculture, particularly for the interest of the previous administration, past administrations that have actually looked at the agri sector as being a critical sector. We have seen some, improvements. We have seen the effort of government in basically interventions, providing interventions into the sector for smallholder farmers, encouraging the increase in productivity. But obviously, access to modern farming techniques are still lacking. But I think policies that have been initiated thus far, I guess, is the implementation that we're looking forward to being more robust.
Being more robust. A lot of work we know, everyone believes should be done, at least following even the president's directive on food security. But let's assess various initiatives so far. One of the notable ones is the Anchor Borrower Scheme by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And of course, we've had the likes of AFDB and others supporting the agricultural sector. How well have all of these performed, or have they impacted growth in the sector?
Well, I think that, when you look at the various, agricultural interventions, more recent being the Anchor Borrowers program. Of course, you have the the program was a positive for the nation.
Before we move to my next question, I'd like us to stay a bit on those challenges. Can we identify some of them, these challenges? Because many will believe that lack of finance, resource shortages, and all of that are the major issues, or even moving produce from rural areas to urban areas. What other challenges would you identify? You're a player in this industry.
The truth of it is that beyond, the access to finance, which the Anchor Borrowers program tried to address, we had climate change, to deal with, where you had droughts, you had flooding. But I think the most challenging aspect of the Anchor Borrowers program, as experienced by farmers, which is insecurity. And that is, and I still believe that is still a challenge that needs to be addressed squarely. So, of course, I do recall that also the COVID-19 pandemic did affect, smooth operations, deliveries, timely deliveries to farmers, and so on and so forth. Of course, challenges are also that we do not have a robust extension services, that the farmers can enjoy from, that would prepare them for climate change effects and so on and so forth. I think that those are some of the challenges that were encountered under the program and during the program.
Let's now stay with the new minister and set an agenda for him. What do you think should be his immediate focus? And are there available quick wins?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to look at the background of the minister. He's obviously an accomplished administrator, because of his background. He was a former commissioner, a chief of staff of his state, House of Representative member, a senator, and obviously a party administrator. So I think he will do well. But I also think that there are quick wins, so to speak, like you're saying, that he needs to maybe focus on. For instance, I've mentioned this insecurity, and I think that the ministry actually has this agro rangers that was established, and I think it's very important that they are strengthened, more numbers are deployed with effective equipment and so on and so forth, to give confidence to farmers to be able to go back. Obviously, I'm not the first person to say this, but you also have infrastructure deficit quite a bit. Of course, connectivity is a problem. When I say that, lack of access roads, for instance, so that you are getting even to the farmers to help them, and of course their produce to come out becomes a challenge without good access roads. One of the major problems of agriculture today is post-harvest losses, and a good strategy to develop the storage capacities that we have, or we already have, and to increase them is very important. And I think also that I think the president had mentioned it already, that Nigeria ought to be doing all-year farming. So we have existing irrigation facilities. They are not enough. They ought to be, and they need to be working. And I think that those are things that he needs to look at. Also, I think access to finance for smallholder farmers, I think, is critical. Like I earlier mentioned, if you have a cotton farmer that requires 7 bags of fertilizer, and I think prices are upwards of 25 to 30,000 as it is today, a farmer can't afford that. And I think that he has to find a way, put in a strategy to make sure that access to finance is a lot easier for farmers, and that is at a low cost to farmers. I always say that, yes, government has tried to say 9% interest rate for loans, but I think that at this level, trying to tackle food security, making sure that Nigeria is not importing what we potentially can produce, I think we can be deliberate about the interest rates and bring them down so that we can be competitive. Also, value chain development, I think that approach is good. You should look into that. Also, research and development is key. If you look at, for instance, for cotton, Institute of Agricultural Research, they have the national mandate for the development of cotton. But they always complain that they have insufficient funding to enable them to, produce the breeder seeds and the foundation seeds, and to test and make sure that even the varieties that they've have come out with will meet, international quality parameters. By the way, the IAR has over 8, varieties of cotton that we can produce in Nigeria, specific to our agroecological zones. So I think also training is very important for farmers. Because of this climate change experiences that we're having, it is critical that farmers are able to be trained to mitigate against these climate changes. Extension, I think, is important, extension services. And I think all this is under the ministry. We are lacking when it comes to having an effective extension service to be provided to the farmers. And I think all this is very important that they are brought on board by the new minister.
A lot of work are outlined there. Let's talk about partnership with international agencies, and how do we properly benefit from these loans, grants, and all to boost productivity across board in the agricultural space?
Well, I think that what the incoming minister should do is to, I wouldn't want to say dust up, but come up with a comprehensive agricultural development strategy. And I think that in that strategy, if he could be, let me say, more deliberate in terms of, okay, there are international partners everywhere, which ones do we need to target? And I think that if you target a particular international partner, agency or whatnot, and you are able to align your strategy to their goals, I think it becomes quite easy for them to also come on board and support Nigeria through loans, soft loans, through grants, and so on and so forth. But I think also partnerships with these international agencies and partners is important in terms of, okay, what are we going to use them for? What do we need them for? I know that, for instance, good quality planting material is a challenge. I speak specifically for cotton, for instance, and I know that other crops have that disadvantage. And if we don't get the right planting materials in ground, of course, we can't expect any magical quantities and qualities to be produced. So I think that is important. I think capacity building, I think also collaboration in research and development specifically to our own ecological zones is important. But I think we need the expertise that is out there through the international partnerships and to be brought on board. And I think that that will improve the productivity level of Nigeria. So if you look at the statistics based on yields, I think we're doing very poorly. And I think that that's the importance of farming. You know, if that's a critical, a requirement that, your yields will be they'll make sense. And that's why a farmer can go home happy that through his yields and pricing, he's able to take care of himself and his family.
All right, give me a minute. Let's go on this break and we'll come back to wrap up this conversation. We're glad to have you back. Yes, we continue the discussion, setting an agenda for the agricultural ministry. Very important one there. And I've been speaking with the president of the National Curtains Association of Nigeria, live from our Abuja studios, Mr. Anibe Achimugo. Before I let you go, what will now be the outlook for the sector, considering all of these challenges, and specifically for cotton farmers? What are you expecting?
Thank you for this question. I think that the outlook cannot be without the challenges, like I earlier mentioned. The infrastructure deficits, the access to finance, productivity or low productivity. But I think also when we look at the outlook in terms of prospects, I think it's very, very good. I say that because first and foremost, you have a government that is interested, that has declared a state of emergency in agriculture, in the food sector, food security. So that is a good sign that at least our policymakers and decision makers are actually looking and are concerned about the current state of agriculture. Also, we look at the fact that you have growing demand because our population is growing. And, we need to be able to feed ourselves and not rely too much on importation. In fact, import substitution should be a focus. You also have the youth that are interested in agriculture. But of course, we have to find ways and means to make it more attractive to them. Nobody wants to go back to the hoe and cutlass type of farming. So mechanization, I think, is key to be brought on board. Nigeria's opportunity to be actually an export, a major export for destination, or yes, for specific crops, like cotton, for instance, like palm, rubber, still exist. And I think that we can get that Nigeria can export to the international market. There's value addition that Nigeria is thinking about now. There's agro businesses that are propping up. And these things will also add value, obviously, to the agricultural products that are produced. And of course, we feed ourselves. And of course, job creation is also a major benefit from this. Now for cotton particularly, and I'm very happy to state that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had mentioned it, during his campaigns, and in his manifesto, that, he will look into the revamping of cotton and the textile sector of the economy. And I think that as it is, cotton farmers are not different from other farmers, really. What we still require is access to finance. It is training, capacity building. It is this value chain approach, which I'm happy to say that under the Anchor Borrowers Program, I think cotton was the first commodity crop that actually adopted a value chain model. And that needs to be enhanced. That needs to be And I think generally for agriculture, speaking also for cotton, it's important that inputs and whatever interventions that government wants to do, even the private sector, should be done on time. Every crop has its own planting calendar, and it must be adhered to if we want to actually benefit from good yields and quality. So these are things that need to be put in place. And I talk, that if you look at the Anchor Borrowers program, for instance, for me, it was one of the best, or is one of the best agricultural programs yet introduced. Why? Because it has dealt with the critical success factors, which, for instance, one being inputs being given to farmers. The exact recommended, expertly recommended inputs is captured under the Anchor Borrowers program. We're talking about also minimum guaranteed prices, because we approach it through economics of production. And there's no way, obviously, that something will cost you 100 naira and somebody will be paying you, or you'll be expected to get less than the 100 naira. So that also is taken care of under the Anchor Borrowers program, minimum guaranteed price. And finally, the access to market, very critical, because at least in the case of cotton, we were directly linked to the cotton ginneries. And I think during that period, we were able to raise from 7 ginneries that were skeletal work to up to 23, although we have about 25 in the country, 52 in the country. So yes, I think that is a step in the right direction. But unfortunately, what happened for cotton was that the support was not, it didn't continue. It was a 1-year intervention, 2019-2020. But unfortunately, in 2021, there was no support. So we are back to where we were, so to speak. We had gains, and gains were that we produced significant quantities of cotton. We got farmers back to being interested in farming cotton. Ginneries were brought back to operations and so on. But we still thank the government, we thank the Central Bank of Nigeria, we thank the Bank of Industry. All these institutions, organizations have really tried. But I think that we have to continue to be deliberate and be able to focus on what we know this sector can actually add to Nigeria's GDP.
Brilliant conversation. I must thank you so much for starting the week with us on Business Nigeria. Now, President, National Quartering Association of Nigeria, Mr. Anibe Achimogo. We'll keep a tab. We'll follow up on all of these suggestions, policy issues, and we hope to have you in subsequently to analyze how well the ministers are faring in office. Thank you so much and have a great week.